Welcome, beast masters and flesh sculptors, to some of the darkest laboratories in the mortal realms. Today we are talking about the clans of Skaven, specifically the Clans Moulder. Now, up till this point in our Skaven series, we've covered a few of the different ways the shadow of the Great Horn Rat has fallen upon the realms. Basically, how do the Skaven manifest their warlike devotion to their deity? Whether through numbers, religious fervor, but today is special because we're talking about my personal favorite of the Skaven great clans, because we're diving into the Clans Moulder. And while we've, explored a lot so far, the Clans Moulder stands a breed apart, combining the worst of Skaven ingenuity with the most vile of biological experimentation. This clan does not rely on sheer numbers or the specificity of their diseases they can throw at people, but by biological, technological prowess. They wield power through the monstrous abominations that they create. They do this by mutating, by surgical operations, by all kinds of stuff. Now, I'm going to make all kinds of sweeping generalizations in this video about Skaven technology, but understand that in the context of this episode, we're just talking about biological technology. There's some overlap with Clan Scryer, who traditionally hold the mantle of, the techie Skaven, but this is sort of a different iteration. To me, it's MacGyver versus the human centipede. Sure, MacGyver can build a solution to anything just like Scryer can solve any problem and get, a rickety thing working to fix something, but that's practical engineering. They aren't, quote-unquote, making things in the same sense that the villain from the Human Centipede movie is making a thing, right? Different weekends, whatever floats your boat. These Fleshcrafters are not content with normal military conquests. They seek to reshape the fabric of the realms themselves, creating all kinds of nasty monsters to unleash upon the mortal realms. Their weapons are living nightmares, twisted and tortured into forms of unnatural strength and ferocity, and they make fantastic models and weapons in the stories. Essentially, these can be small, performance-enhancing surgeries, or the creation of living war machines. And it all has that body horror, The Thing, Island of Dr. Moreau, and Frankenstein mashed together, and I absolutely adore it. So today we're going to begin our exploration of the Skaven Clans Moulder and talk about the various units that our battle tome has given us to bring to the table. They're not the most numerous or politically savvy, but their unique blend of biological warfare, meaning the creations that they make, and their relentless cruelty make them distinct in Age of Sigmar. Now, one thing I like to add right up top, if you're interested in this video, you like anything by the Skaven, please consider using any of the affiliate links in my description down below. You'll see exactly how much money you save, and every time you do, a tip goes in my tip jar that directly supports me, my wife, our cats, the whole channel, and a huge thank you to everyone who uses those links. I can't tell you how life-changing it is. As a special shout out, I'd like to throw Noble Knight Games out there for you. If you're looking for any used models or out of print stuff, check out Noble Knight Games. They're a wonderful store here in the US, and I'm so happy to partner with them. Lastly, if you're new to 4th edition Age of Sigmar and you're looking to get started playing, consider checking out Goonhammer. It's an awesome blog and resource online with tons of tutorials, tactics, that kind of stuff, model reviews, and they've recently got it into YouTube with one of their hosts, Campbell, who's doing a fantastic job. I'll leave a link to them down below. Go support Goonhammer. Okay, so what is the Clans Moulder? They kind of, in my mind, represent inescapable horror mixed with unchecked ambition and cruelty. Again, they want to twist the image of the realms and fleshcraft it into their own nightmare, and so they do this in a few different ways. The first is selective breeding of test subjects, and that's kind of a baseline of biological manipulation. We did that in our real world with just studying plants and how they cross-pollinate and stuff like that. Sometimes they'll do surgeries to, say, add a limb, a few teeth, something like that, maybe replace a lost limb. But from there, the real, what we'll call flesh crafting begins. Using warpstone, they can manipulate and mutate the flesh of their victim, but in a sort of controlled way. There's a few ways to go about it. Each clan is going to have their own, unique recipe, their own 11 spices and herbs blend, if you will. Some will grind warpstone into a powder, liquefy it, and inject it into their subject, sort of like an unstable mutagenic growth hormone. Others will embed the raw warpstone itself into the creature as sort of like an anchor point for mutation and growth. And sometimes they do different combinations of these things. And what they do to these creatures, the rat ogres, whatever their creations are what make them unique from clan to clan. Everybody has their own little recipe. These experiments to try making, living siege weapons all take place in their dark laboratories, which they affectionately call hell pits. But there is a purpose to this, and it's a thing that brings their reverence for the great horned rat into their day-to-day mad science. Each clan, in some capacity, wants to bring into life what is known as a writhing brood spire. This is very, very lightly touched on in this book, and I'd love to know more about it, but essentially, they all want to build the perfect vessel for the great horned rat to inhabit. If we build it, he will come is kind of the mentality. So they're trying to construct a living flesh avatar for their god. And all of these things that we see as units are experiments along the way to that destination, which I thought was a fantastically cool idea. And now I kind of want a statue of Cain, but for the Skaven, and it's just like a pile of dead stuff comes to life, hits somebody near him. And along the path, like I said, to this goal, in order to fund their research or, make the progress that they need, they do what other clans do, which is they sell off goods and services. If you need some tough monsters for your Skaven horde, to run between the feet of, this is where you come. They are the warpstone twisted fist of the army. Fewer in number, but the individual killing power of their creations is magnified dozens of times over through the mad science of the Clans Moulder. They're creating their own living weapons of war, and talking about the creatures they breed and pull together for the services to offer to other clans, let's move into what you and I can bring to the table. Right? I mean, there's all kinds of creations in lore that they might create, but these are the things that they're going to be using and selling for war purposes that you and I get to work with. And so we'll kick it off with the only hero they have, which is the Master Moulder, a figure steeped in cruelty and ambition, and with every experiment he pushes the boundaries of what is possible in the realm of biological manipulation, so fleshcrafting. They can transform once normal creatures into monstrous engines of destruction. And the book here uses a term to describe them that I love, a surgeon warlord, hyphenated. They'll go into battle to get either new test subjects or watch their creations at work, all the while they are suturing up monstrous creatures and putting them back into the fight. Now, one thing that is highly shown by the new miniature that they got is the fact that they do a lot of augmentations on themselves, intentionally or not. Basically, they might choose to do an operation that gives them an extra arm, tougher flesh, something like that, and that's kind of why we get some of the model aspects we have, but then sometimes mutation will happen because all you do is hang around warpstone all day. And that's why I love the new model they got. It's this mix of horror because there's things that are on there clearly intentional, like the other arm and stuff like that, but then there's just mutated points where it just seems like something organically is happening to him, and that's exactly what it is. His ingredients slowly will mutate any Skaven. Now, as far as units go, we do have a few. The Brood Terror is the latest crime against nature to saunter out of the hell pits, and that's that new big monster that we got. And the info here is really interesting and not a direction that I expected. This is a monstrous colossi like many of their other creations, but you'll notice that there's a second head attached to the Brood Horror's neck. Usually, but not always, this is the head of the former Master Moulder of the clan, the leader we just talked about. This process can be done through betrayal or request, but they are essentially sutured and grafted directly into the beast itself. So why would they do this? Well, for those of the Master Moulders who have this done against their will, it's seen as the ultimate betrayal, right? Somebody wanted to get rid of their rival, so what better way to both embarrass him and punish him than by suturing him onto a great beast that he is no longer in control of? It's sadistic and mean. But honestly, most brood terrors have a grafted on Master Moulder who view this as a form of ascension. Essentially, they get to become a part of the warp-twisted creations that they want to see in the world. But the practical reason, regardless of how they got stuck onto this brood terror, is that there's a practical purpose. This thing needs brain power. There are too many muscles and nerves to operate to then use the weapon system that this thing has. And so the Clans Moulder way of adding RAM to their PC, so to speak, is to graft another brain into it. Sometimes this will result in the Master Moulder having control, which is ideal, right? Because then you get the mind of this crazy person's mad surgeon warlord in the body of this unspeakable horror that is huge. But a lot of times they're just along for the ride, because the will of the monster is too great, and they're basically maybe using their brain power to say, point a gun in a direction, and that's about it. But the most, iconic, I would think, and rank and file unit of the Clans Moulder are the Rat Ogres, these towering brutes of muscle and rage that have been twisted and enhanced through dark science. Most of them are too dumb to use any weapons of any kind, but those with an extra brain cell will sometimes have a flamethrower bolted onto them. But these are the main commodity of the Clans Moulder and what they deal in. Early in Skaven history, they realized that they were having trouble taking on enemies like ogres. I mean, they were just so tough individually that taking on an army of ogres was a very intimidating proposition. The solution was then to capture some, mutate them, graft Skaven heads and brains onto them, and then breed this new Frankenstein horror populace. That is how we get modern-day rat ogres. And they are a real representations of what their clan focuses on, right? Some will have extra limbs, some will have warpstone injectors built in. But remember, the candle that burns twice as bright lasts half as long. Which to Moulder is a boon, because that's planned obsolescence. That's a future customer, right? If I create a batch of rat ogres that are incredibly talented, they have all these warpstone injectors, they're pumped up with warpstone, like actual stones hanging out of their body. They go in and they win the battle for you, but then they expire, essentially they burn themselves out. That Claw Lord is going to come back to you for more because they won. They did the thing. That's good for business. And this is often the unit you'll see around most often. And honestly, there's been a big uptick in rat ogres since the Stormcast came back, simply because you need a big thing to take on the other big lightning guy. But the true terror of the Clans Moulder is the Hell Pit Abomination. A nightmarish mass of flesh, claws, tentacles, anything that they can find, all jammed together in one unnatural order. The idea of this creation is that it is the ultimate expression of the clan's twisted genius, a creature so massive and destructive that it can turn the tide of battle on its own. The Hell Pit Abomination is a living siege engine born from the fused and twisted remains of countless corpses. And this, to me, is a Master Moulder's form of religious expression, an artistic vision of writhing flesh that embodies the world that they're trying to make. There are so many great stories involving these guys, like they're crashing into steam tanks and taking them out. There's a story about a Skaven getting enveloped into its folds and absorbed. Like, can you freaking imagine how gross that would be? Like, one of its torn open seams is there, and it's just full of carcasses and random organs, and you fall into that and you can't get out. And they also, because of this sort of fluid nature with all the different organs and body parts they have, these things just don't want to die. And by that I mean if it takes a cannonball to the heart, okay? Normally a kill shot. Well, this thing has dozens of hearts inside of it collectively, and so the blood can just find alternate arteries and veins to keep itself going. It's that kind of constant twisting and mutating and warping that I love. Picking up dead body parts on the battlefield, crudely assimilating them as it goes, and it just stands out as one of the coolest miniatures in the Skaven line in my opinion. Now I want to end this video like I end all of them, talking about why is this cool? Why is Clans Moulder cool in relation to all the other Skaven clans, right? Well, reading that bit about the writhing broodspire, meaning what they want to build, I realized it's almost a little ambiguous, because they could be building a specific body, right, for the Great Horned Rat to come into, but also it could be a location. Like, if I'm trying to think of like the movie franchise Alien, how like all their environments by those xenomorphs are twisted and flesh crafted and all these weird things. What if they're trying to do the same thing and they're trying to create a place for the Great Horned Rat to inhabit, not necessarily a physical body? You decide. To me, this army screams for third-party model support. Now, it's not going to matter to people who only go to official GW events or whatever, because you have to use their models, but if I were doing this army, I would grab one of each GW sculpt, and then I would go to a third party and get their versions of the Brood Terror or the Hell Pit Abomination and stuff like that. And I say this because within the lore of the army, they're constantly reiterating that each of these things is an individual creation, a result of their specific tools and methods at the time. So personally, I like when there's a variety of poses and sculpts. I think it sells the image of this big menagerie of monsters much more. I've been a fan of body horror ever since I watched the movie The Thing when I was way too young, and this faction really scratches that itch for me. I would love to hear your thoughts on the Clans Moulder. Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Happy wargaming!